Get that big going downhill with some momentum. It's tough to stop.
And Nimhardy had 13 assists in that game in his rookie year.
As Horford's now railing every three. 4 of 6 for Big Al.
He's found his shooting touch so much so they're running plays for him now. Podziemski set that screen for him. And Jimmy Butler was looking for Al Horford the whole time.
Well, it wasn't always pretty tonight inside Chase Center, but the Warriors a big run over the final quarter and a half. Al Horford comes around. They get some big-time production from Moses Moody and Will Richard. Those two have got to continue to see an uptick in minutes. And the Warriors finally, for the first time ever, that's right, for the first time ever, the Golden State Warriors beat the Indiana Pacers inside Chase Center. First time in 7 tries. I know that's been a nugget that was making the rounds on the television broadcast. And the final team to lose a game inside Chase Center, the Indiana Pacers, who had won every time they had showed up to take on the Warriors since Chase Center opened back in 2019. We welcome you in and appreciate everybody in the YouTube chat first and foremost as we're here on Dubs OT with JD here on Esports Leader. 808 KNBR. 415-808-5627 as we are live on the radio, live on YouTube and Twitch. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open for you as well. And yeah, a little bit of a different location. We're coming to you from Levi's Stadium in the Tasman studio here, where Copes and Todd Husak and Tracy Sandler did the pre and post game today. 49ers, a tough one for them as they get blown out by the Rams. And so long day, football duties. So no Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City tonight. And a little bit of a later start due to the Sunday Night Football game, which was airing on the radio portion here for the Sports Leader. So the Chargers make do of the Steelers and on into our Sunday evening here to talk a little bit of Dubs basketball. So thank you to everyone, a lot of the regulars in the YouTube chat for waiting patiently, trying to interact with those folks because they're the best YouTube chat in sports. And frankly, I was kind of bored watching the Sunday Night Football game and going over my notes and ready to go. I like to, sometimes we get that 5-10 minute delay, Kyle, as I make the walk over to Harmonic in Thrive City. And I'm just kind of itching to go. And we got to do a little quickie tech setup, make sure the cameras and everything are working. So today I was just kind of sitting here, man, and good to have you in our San Francisco studios, but I'm just kind of sitting here chilling, bunch of different notes, ready to react, ready to talk to the people. And I was just stymied by the Chargers defense, I guess, much like Aaron Rodgers was earlier tonight. Kyle, what's going on, brother?
How's it going? No, yeah, you and me both. You and me both. I was making myself comfortable here in our Daly City studio. But I mean, the one good thing from that Sunday night game was Keenan Allen. How about Keenan Allen, the Cal alum, setting the franchise record in receptions?
Gotta work your Cal guy in.
I do.
Work your Cal guy in. All right, we'll allow it on this night. Warriors win 114-83, the final in a game that, for the most part, was a lot closer than that, dangerously close and ugly. And my goodness, this game was Warriors up at the end of the first quarter. But this game was ugly, up 7 at the half, up 6 at the end of the first quarter, 48-41, just an ugly second quarter. And the Warriors weren't hitting shots. And the Pacers, I mean, my goodness, the Pacers on this night, Warriors still did not have Steph Curry. Good news on the Steph Curry front as it relates to the 6-game road trip, by the way, that the Warriors are going to embark on tomorrow, and it will start in Oklahoma City on Tuesday. So a good test for the Warriors. They've got OKC and San Antonio twice. Then they play the Pelicans, Orlando, and Miami before their next home game, which is going to be in 12 days, the weekend before Thanksgiving, November the 21st. Then the next Warrior home game is they'll take on Portland on that night. And of course, we'll be back at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City on that night, but no Halliburton for the Pacers. Obviously, he had the ugly injury in Game 7 of the finals, the Achilles. Pascal Siakam, they just gave the night off. The Pacers also don't have Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith. They don't have Matherin tonight. as he's got a toe sprain. Quentin Jackson, who went for 25 last week against the Warriors, he was out. And so, yeah, I mean, just nobody going. TJ McConnell was out. I mean, really a lot of top 5, 6 players for Indiana all out. Warriors didn't have Steph, and really for 2.5 quarters, it was a pretty ugly game. And so the Warriors, though, do put their foot down middle of the third quarter. Big run. It was tied at 65 basically toward the end of the third quarter. The Warriors finished the game 49-18. So they go plus 31 over the course of the final quarter plus. And Al Horford was cooking tonight. Much needed game for Al Horford as he returned, finding his shot from long distance. And the storyline really of this game for Golden State is a couple of guys who came off the bench, really 3 players who came off the bench if you include Horford and his 4 for 6 from three-point range. But Moses Moody tonight, a game high plus 22, tied with Brandon Pajemski for game high honors in terms of the plus minus for the Warriors. And Will Richard in plus 19, scores 15 points, didn't hit a 3 tonight, but his defense, his rebounding, his steadiness to really be able to show that he can play in almost any lineup. Will Richard, I think, of this stretch of games where the Warriors have played without Stephen Curry, I think the biggest bright spot and maybe player that the Warriors are learning about that they like Will Richard, and I think Steve Kerr in particular like Will Richard. We've talked about it even in the preseason, the fact that Kerr, you could tell, went from very quickly thinking that he was not going to play a lot maybe to begin the season to somebody that would be extremely trustable even early on in the season. And I think the beginning of the regular season when Moses Moody was down, I think there was some strong consideration given to Will Richard even being a starter at the beginning of the season. But Kuminga was rewarded because Kuminga had played so well and doing what the Warriors coaching staff had tried to ask him to do throughout the course of the preseason, that Kuminga was ultimately going to get that nod. So you look at that, and Richard, though, continues to be somebody that is showing that he can play when Steph's not out there and Draymond's not out there and Jimmy Butler's not out there, but he's also showing that he can be a productive and positive player when those guys are out there. And so as the Warriors and Steve Kerr tries to figure out ultimately what the rotation is going to look like when they hit their first stretch of go time here. And I think the first stretch of go time for Golden State begins on Tuesday, because that's when they're going to get Steph and Curry back. Steve Kerr telling reporters after the game inside Chase Center that Curry now is expected to make his return on Tuesday in Oklahoma City against the Thunder. And so the question is going to be, does Steve Kerr look to continue with a similar rotation that had worked for him in those first 5 to 7 games before Steph Curry was ill, or are there going to be some rotational type tweaks? And I think if you look at the last week, and rotations are always evolving, but Will Richard, somebody that I think on paper, because his game is so steady, he can play with the big boys. He can play with the vets. He can play with the OGs. He's somebody that has the ability to just get in where he fits in and impact the game defensively, impact the game with cutting, impact the game with ball movement, impact the game with high basketball IQ. And so while you may be saying, JD, there are not a lot of great grandiose takeaways off of tonight, and I think that's true, but Will Richard is somebody that is going to be, I think, relied on more and more here as Steve Kerr looks to maybe shuffle the rotation a little bit. Moses Moody is another player that now that he's back fully from his injury, and he's had some up and down nights. He did not shoot it well. None of the young guys, Moody or Pajemski or Kuminga, shot the ball well in Denver the other night. Kuminga, real rough game. Everybody, I believe, for the Warriors ended up being a net positive in the game in terms of the plus minus tonight. But you look at Kuminga, he ends up, I think, the lowest. Yeah, everybody was a positive. But yeah, he was a +2, 1 for 9 tonight, 0 for 5 from 3-point range. He got to the free throw line 6 times. He was rebounding and the intent was there. But the game that I think they were asking Kuminga to play with Steph Curry is a less effective type of a game for him when Steph Curry is not out there. The whole keep the ball moving, look to be a passer, that kind of a thing. Now, the energy can be there, the defense can be there, the rebounding can be there. That's price of admission stuff for Kuminga. But if you're kind of looking at stock up, stock down, if Steve Kerr does a little bit of a mini rotation reset, I think Will Richard and even more to the point, Moses Moody, their impact and numbers and playing time are projecting to go up. And I think we're starting to see, with Jonathan Kuminga struggling, and the struggles go beyond the shooting struggles of just the last 2 games where Kuminga's 4 for 19. He did not play well in the second half in Sacramento. He did not have a great game against Phoenix. Even as the game went on a week ago last night in Indiana, Kuminga struggled more and more in that game. And as time has gone on, players are going to have slumps, and so it's how do you get more Will Richard in? How do you get potentially more Moses Moody in? I'm not saying Kuminga's not going to be playing. Hell, I'm not even going to say Kuminga's not going to be starting necessarily anytime soon. I think Kerr will probably roll with Steph Curry back with the majority of the players who have been playing around Steph Curry that had played well and earned their time at the beginning of the year. It's really 2 different teams as you look at it for the Warriors. It's been kind of this non-Steph team, and then it's the team that you've got with Steph Curry. But I think guys like Moody and guys like Will Richard can play with any rotation on any night and make a positive impact. And really it comes down to, are they making shots or not? And if they're not making shots, maybe you look to go in a different direction. But I think we're going to see moving forward more Moody and more Will Richard. And I think if you're looking for a couple of players that are going to see their minutes not completely go by the wayside as far as like not playing, or even in the case of Kuminga not starting, but if the games are going to be more like the games we've seen from Kuminga the last week plus, it's probably going to be a little bit less Kuminga, and it's probably going to be a little bit less Buddy Hield, I would imagine, in terms of who's going to be taking, losing some minutes if it's going to be a scenario where they're going to have to move to have more minutes for guys like Moody and guys like Richard. So 808 KMBR 415-808-5627. Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Warriors do get the win. It was ugly for 2.5 quarters tonight, but the bright spots, Moses Moody, Will Richard, Al Horford, as Horford does come around and knock down 4 of 6 from 3-point range. Really, I think tonight was Al Horford's second best game with the Warriors. His best game was the game against Denver that they won in the home opener, and he was part of that closing lineup. Remember the supersized lineup with Steph and Jimmy and Kuminga and Draymond, and Al Horford going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the stretch there and getting the defense that helped the game get to overtime. Steph Curry was incredibly hot that night. He hit a couple of big shots down the stretch to help force overtime, and then the Warriors in the overtime ultimately able to get the win against the Nuggets on that night. But other than that game, I think this was the next best and most impactful game that Al Horford has played as a member of the Golden State Warriors. And I think it was getting to a point where the concern level on Horford was reaching a little bit of a boiling point, certainly among the fan base. How long is how many games is it too early, or is it a small sample size, or whatever? I mean, you start to look at getting to a point where it's 5 and 5. I mean, 10 games is not, and I know Horford had played in 7 of those games. 10 games is not nothing in terms of a sample size, and we were getting to a point where really he's probably going to get this road trip. And if he didn't show, some semblance of starting to come around, in terms of the shooting, which is the number one thing that he brings to the table. In addition to the defense and the ball movement and all those things, I think, I don't know that he wouldn't necessarily be playing as much. I think Kerr's going to continue to give him opportunities to try to show that he can get out there, but just to have a big game, have an impactful game, even against a team like Indiana, who beat the Warriors 8 nights ago in Indianapolis, it goes a long way toward calming down and helping the confidence. Yeah, I said it, of even a 39-year-old future Hall of Fame NBA champion that's coming to a new team with some high expectations that he's going to be one of a couple of players that maybe can help this team get put over the top as it relates to being a championship contender. So I thought tonight was a must win for the Dubs. I really did. Coming in, as much as any game can be a must win on November the 9th, but I thought this was a game they absolutely had to get. Indiana's 1-9 now. And my goodness, the embarrassing nature of the one being the Warriors still. I mean, the stench of the one on that Pacers record every time you look at their record in the standings, which I've started to look more and more at the standings the last couple of days as we get closer to that 10-game mark across the league. And just to see that one, you just go, yikes, like goodness, like that, like, the Warriors are the one. And everybody else has been able to beat Indiana to this point. But yeah, ugly second quarter. Pacers came out firing from three, and it was a pretty close game, really, all the way up until the middle of the third quarter. Pacers came out and hit some threes early in the third. Warriors were up 7 going into the third quarter. Indy, a 12-5 start. It was kind of back and forth up until the point where it was tied at 65, and then the Warriors went on a 10-0 run to close the quarter. A rough sequence from Brandon Pajemski, some rough play from Jonathan Kuminga over the stretch that immediately preceded that 10-0 run to close the quarter, and then the Warriors wind up getting the first 4 points of the second or of the fourth quarter. And Jimmy Butler tonight is another player that did a little bit of everything. And without Steph, tonight is the kind of night, if it's just going to be Steph out as it was, and I know Melton's out too, but I got to give Jimmy Butler a nod here in playing 30 minutes, 21 points, 9 boards, 7 assists, 2 steals, block shot. That's what the Warriors are paying Jimmy Butler for. With Steph, without Steph. And I think you could make the case, like tonight, if it's only going to be Steph that's sitting out, that's what it's got to look like more often than not from Jimmy Butler. Not necessarily in terms of the overall stat line, but more in terms of just setting a tone as, I'm the best player in this game. I'm the best player on this team, and I'm going to lead the way in the ways that I lead, meaning scoring, getting to the free throw line, setting up others, rebounding. And Jimmy he only got 4 free throws tonight. He missed a bunch of them too. I think 3 out of the 4 I think he missed. But he got into the paint, 10 of 15. Like Jimmy Butler's got to make his presence felt for this Warriors team. He's got to make his presence felt when Steph's out there, and he's sure as hell got to make his presence felt when Steph's not out there. And I think, again, opponent be damned, and the Pacers roster that they put out there tonight is without question the worst in the NBA. I mean, that is a 2019, 2020, no Steph, no Clay, KD went to Brooklyn, kind of a lineup that they put out there tonight. But it doesn't matter. You got to have your best players set the tone to be able to lead, and that it's got to be Jimmy and it's got to be Draymond. And I thought Draymond was again, turnovers a problem for Draymond tonight, but I Jimmy above all, I think when Steph is out, has to be the guy, has to be the lead dog, and then others can kind of come along. And we've seen it in a couple of the games where Steph missed after the Jimmy Butler trade toward the end of last year, where Jimmy went out and he played like that. It doesn't have to be playoff Jimmy 40 points and he's hitting threes and I get it. Like, that's probably too much to ask, but making your presence felt and letting everybody know you're on the court and not just content kind of playing, he always plays team ball when he's out there, but looking to force the action a little bit, looking to try to be the leading scorer a little bit, I think is important. Accepting that challenge, I think is important. And Jimmy Butler did that tonight. And I think that's something that, again, file it away, but we're going to need to see a little bit more of it from Jimmy in these games that some of them where Steph plays and the young guys are not performing well. And I think it's going to have to be something that also translates on the road, because the one thing the Warriors have been able to do this season so far in 11 games is win at home. 5-0 at home, 1-5 on the road, 6-5 overall here, but the next 6 are on the road, as we've talked about, and the next 3 are incredibly difficult games at OKC and then 2 at San Antonio before they wrap things up in the back half of the trip with the Pelicans, Orlando, and Indiana. I'm sorry, Pelicans, Orlando, and Miami in the back-to-back. The Warriors are done with Indiana. First team Warriors are done with for this 2025-26 season is the Indiana Pacers. They wind up with the season series split. But the role players have not played well enough on the road, and the veteran players have not brought enough energy on the road, whether it's been in Portland, whether it's been in Milwaukee or Indiana. And I think in some ways it's crazy to think, but in some ways the Warriors are enhanced by the fact that they're playing better teams. I feel like the first 3 games of this trip, because the vets, and we'll see if there's a rest component to the second of the back-to-back in San Antonio with the 2 games to be played in San Antonio. Do the Warriors rest veterans against the Spurs and then play them in the second game? Do they play them in both games? I mean, Steph's going to be somewhat rested because he's been ill here and he's missed some games. So does that mean Steph actually will play the back-to-back because he missed a couple of games here of late? We shall see on all of that. But regardless, I do think the Warriors get juice by playing the defending champions in OKC and a team that they like going up against. I think all of the hype surrounding the beginning of this season for Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio, that energizes the Warriors to play in those games. And it's going to be a couple of them are going to be nationally televised games. The game on Tuesday, the game on Friday are going to be nationally televised games with, I believe, NBC and Amazon Prime. So that's going to be, they get juiced much more for those games than they do for, say, the Pelicans and at Orlando and at Miami. So they're going to have their own challenges as those 3 games project to be more winnable in terms of talent and who they're going up against. Those are the games the Warriors are have shown that maybe they'll have a little bit of a lack of energy and intensity. It's on the vets to bring that and to have it trickle down to the rest of the younger players. All right, let's take our first time out. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Warriors get the win, a big close to this game, wrapping up the third quarter and on into the fourth quarter as the Warriors do blow out, handle business, take care of the Pacers, 114-83. Phone calls coming up, 808 KNBR, Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open as well, but we're going to get right into the YouTube chat coming back here to begin the 9 o'clock hour. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader.
Pablo with 4 to shoot. Rudy at 2. Does he see the clock? He did. Got it up and it's fired! Hit a 3! Come on!
Mo's like, hey, I missed the 2 open ones. I just hit the toughest shot of the night for a 4-point play.
Yeah, one of the highlights of the night, the Moses Moody 4-point play, and the Warriors get the job done. A professional win. A professional win is what it winds up being. Didn't look like maybe it was going to be that way. Middle of the third quarter, game's tied at 65. I mean, there were moments there in that third quarter where the Warriors were down a point or two, and you're just thinking, my goodness, like this is ugly. As ugly as it has been in this stretch without Steph Curry. I mean, it was almost in some ways points of the first 2.5 quarters of this game. It felt like it was a new non-Steph low point, at least for the early part of this season. But the Warriors able to knock all of that away, close out the third quarter strong. Moses Moody, a big part of that. Jimmy Butler, as we talked about at the end of the first segment, setting the tone. And then Will Richard coming along and continuing to be a productive player. I think Will Richard, you could make the case, is the biggest bright spot of this stretch now, with the Sacramento game, the Denver game, and the game tonight against Indiana. I think Will Richard is probably the biggest net positive stretch. He is the biggest net positive storyline of this entire stretch, and one that projects to be an intriguing one moving forward, because I think Will Richard is the kind of player that can fit into any rotation. So the question now becomes, will Steve Kerr look to augment the rotation to get Will Richard on the court more with the Warriors' other better players as this team hits the road? So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. We do have some text messages to get to, which we're going to pepper in. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. But let's get to the best YouTube chat in sports, our first installment here on this Sunday evening of Kyle's Clicks. What do we got here, Kyle? Gene McIntyre, buddy Gene, getting us tipped off. This game looks like a schedule win. Pacers banged up, coming off a back-to-back, and Siakam out. Yeah, they made the decision they were going to rest Siakam after playing in Denver last night. So the Nuggets played the Warriors Friday and then stayed home to play the Pacers last night. And then the Pacers play. That's as tough a back-to-back as you can get. Anytime you're going to Denver or from Denver back to play in the Bay, that is a difficult back-to-back. And I think it's the farthest back-to-back in terms of actual miles that you would even have if you're going to be playing on the West Coast or in the Bay potentially the second night. So yeah, I mean, the Pacers are just absolutely ravaged by injuries. And it started with Halliburton, and they got a bunch of other guys out, and then Siakam was really their only healthy guy. And they said, yeah, we're not going to have him break down. We'll give him the night off as well. So schedule win, but the Warriors handled business. Robert Brown, yeah, the game didn't tell much. I mean, Indiana is a lottery team. Yeah, incredible how you go from looking like you're going to win an NBA championship literally 4.5 months ago. And let's not forget, I mean, Indiana was up early in that game and looking good, and even up after Halliburton went out in that game. Now you got the impression they probably weren't going to be able to finish it, and they weren't. Ultimately, the Thunder won the title on that night, but kind of crazy and kind of sad. I mean, the Warriors did go through that in 2019, 2020 after Klay Thompson got hurt and then Kevin Durant left. But the Warriors had also been to 5 straight finals at that point, and they had won 3 championships at that point in 4 years, and then made it to another finals and got beat. So they had gone 3-2 in the finals with 3 titles at the point in which they went through that. The Pacers, I mean, imagine going through the 2018-19 Warriors season and having everything change for that following year with Klay out, and Steph ended up breaking his hand, and Kevin Durant leaves. Miles Turner left to go up to Milwaukee from Indiana. Some bad blood there in terms of the contract. Imagine if you're a Warrior fan and you don't, that was your one shot. Basically, you hadn't won a title. You had never been to the finals before, other than one time in 25 years. You'd been to the finals in 2000, and you wind up with your whole damn roster injured the next year with nothing to show for any of the positivity. So tough year for Indiana as the Warriors and Pacers part ways until next season. But yeah, tonight, not a lot to glean other than it was nice to see the Warriors turn it into a laugher over the course of the last 16 minutes or so of the game. Bennett Roth, Kuminga needs to shoot corner threes only. Otherwise, drive the lane and pump fake. Don't have to try shooting over a defender always. Yeah, I don't. Sometimes he's got to take the wing three. To me, I agree with you, Bennett. He should only take the corner three if wide open and or dared. Now, teams do try to get him out to that wing area. He does like taking that shot. And in fairness to him, before tonight, his 3-point percentage in the small sample size of the early part of the year was fine. It was pushing 40%, if not slightly over 40%. I don't have the packet in front of me with the exact numbers, and it's too early anyway to really care too much about the exact number. But Kuminga had been hitting the 3 ball. It's the problem is the mid-range. The problem is when he puts it on the deck and he wants to shoot the pull-up jumper, or on occasion he wants to shoot a turnaround jumper out of the post if he's getting a post up situation. So, but yeah, it's always you prefer it's drive closeouts, it's look to get fouls, and it's make your free throws, and it's shoot corner threes only. Otherwise, bring the energy, look to pass the ball, and potentially get it back. Live in the dunker. That was the one thing. Like, Kuminga is somebody, I know he doesn't like to be considered necessarily a power forward, but he really, I think, a lot of the time is at his best with the Warriors when he's in the dunker and just gets easy buckets and fouls and dunks and layups off of the actions that the Warriors are running. Again, that being said, you don't have Steph Curry, you probably can't live that way if you're Jonathan Kuminga. And so I do think in the time that Curry's been out, I want to give Kuminga a little bit of the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the fact that I think he's struggled a little bit in deciphering whether or not he should try to take over and be more of a focal point in terms of being an offensive force, or just continue to play the same way the Warriors want him to play without Steph. And I feel like for the most part, he's tried to continue to play the way that they want him to play with Steph not being there. But then a few times where I think he gets the ball in certain positions and he says, "Oh wait, Steph's not here. I am one of the better offensive threats in this team. I need to look to try to find my own and be aggressive." But some of the aggressive efforts have been they've been a little half-hearted, and almost, as I talked about the other night, like he's been caught in between. So Bennett, I kind of agree with you. I think that's a good call in terms of the three balls. Karras and Aaron, okay, for real though, what is it with Kerr and playing two-way contract guys over our drafted players? Genuinely don't understand why Richard isn't getting Spencer's minutes. Well, look, they don't play the same position. Like Pat Spencer's basically a point guard. And so I know everybody's trying to figure out, why Richard needs to play instead of Pods. Richard needs to play instead of Pat. Pat's a point guard. If Steph Curry's not playing, Pat Spencer's playing, because Brandon Podziemski becomes the starting point guard and Pat Spencer becomes the backup point guard. Now, if DeAnthony Melton is healthy and available, maybe Brandon Podziemski's the starting point guard and DeAnthony Melton's the backup point guard at that point, or a backup combo guard that can act as a point guard. But I know everybody wants Will Richard to play instead of Podziemski and Spencer. The reality is Will Richard is going to play for Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga. And it's the same thing with Moses Moody. Like, Moses Moody's going to, can Moody take some Pods minutes when Steph is there? Yes. But the minutes that Moody's going to take, if Moody's going to play more, are probably going to be Kuminga's minutes, because for whatever reason, those two have not shown an ability to play well together effectively. So Moody's going to be on the court, I think, in some of those scenarios where ordinarily you would see Jonathan Kuminga on the court. And I think it's going to be a similar thing with it's Hield and Kuminga. If you're looking at, if you want to get Richard more and you want to get Moody more, those are the two guys that potentially are going to play less. JC Mack, would it kill Kerr to not play Buddy in favor of Will and even Gee? The 3-guard lineup in the second, where Buddy is a small forward, is consistently terrible. Yeah, tonight I do think you can get away with that lineup with Buddy playing some small forward. I think you can get away with it against it's either got to be against an offensively challenged team, or it's got to be, I think, against a team that really is. It's got to be a very regular season feel. It's got to be a team that really is just looking to score and kind of going through the motions in the regular season, and that's where I think you can kind of win with more of an offense first approach. But JC, I'm with you on that. I mean, it's like I said, it's Will Richard. If Will Richard's going to start playing, it's going to be a little bit less of Buddy. But Buddy is a beloved player, and the Warriors do need shooting. And so we saw this even last year, because the Warriors are so void of shooting, that Buddy Hield still found his way playing at least some stretch every single night because the Warriors have so few players up and down their roster that have the ability to shoot the basketball well. Continuing on here, 808 KNBR 415 808 5627. Rebel to Sounds, not much to take away from this game. On to OKC. I would agree with that. Not much to take away from this game. Will Richard didn't have to sweat it out down the stretch. Moses Moody, Al Horford. Al Horford needed a quality game. And again, as we talked about in the first segment, Jimmy freaking Butler setting a tone. That's why Jimmy Butler's making, close to $60 billion or whatever the heck it is for the Warriors this year and next year. But yeah, Tuesday is a true test. The next 3 games are going to be fun, or maybe 2 of the next 3 games are going to be fun. Who knows what the Warriors are going to do with the back-to-back coming up, and they got more and more back-to-backs. They basically go Tuesday, Wednesday. They went Tuesday, Wednesday last week, and they basically go Tuesday, Wednesday the rest of the month or something like that. Fozzie, Richard needs to get 20 to 30 minutes a night. I think it's closer to 20 than 25 to 30. There aren't enough minutes to go around at that point, but I do think he can get 15 to 20 every night. And that's a rotation that maybe sees a little bit less Kuminga and maybe a little less Buddy Hield and no GP2. And I think, Will Richard can get in there. If Steph's back, he could, if Steph's back, he could maybe take some of Pod's minutes too, a little bit, but Pods is still going to be out there as the backup point guard. But now 25 to 30 feels like a little too much, but Richard has shown in the Sacramento game that he can be somebody that you don't think of him as a big time scorer, but in the context of the way Steve Kerr wants to play with or without Steph, the ball movement, share the ball, everybody's going to get an opportunity offensively. That whole scheme and setup, Will Richard's the kind of guy that can play well in that type of scenario. And you wouldn't think of him necessarily as a guy that would play great with the team short, more shorthanded, but so far so good as it relates to Will Richard. So I'm more in the 15 to 20, and then maybe we go north of 20 with a little bit more regularity on some of these nights where the veterans are out. But I do think he's earned his way into the rotation. Digum 117, this 6-game road trip may be their whole season, depending upon how they play. I think that's why tonight was so important. I mean, the fact that they were 5-5 was a major downer, even coming into this game. But you could not lose to the freaking Indiana Pacers to get to 5-6 with the next 3 games coming. You had to at least get to +1. I think you really, you're 6-5. I think you really wish you were 7-4 right now, or even 8-3. But you're not. The games you lost to the Kings and the Bucks and the Pacers are gone, and you can't get them back. So, I think at this point, the hope is you can win one of the next 3. Again, it's a good news, bad news. Can you win one of the next 3, be 500, get the Pelicans game because the Pelicans have not played well to begin the year, and then get one of the 2 in Orlando and Miami, honestly, and just get back home and start winning some of your home games at that point. I mean, I hate to say it on that front, but it really, you even if you lose the next 3. You're feeling, you're 2 under and you got to get the Pelicans game. You're 1 under. Like, you don't want to get where you're 2, 3, 4 under. You don't want that. So any win they can get. Look, the Warriors won in OKC last year. Warriors, I guarantee you the Warriors are going to be up for these games that are coming up here, these next 3. They're going to be a lot more enthused and energized and feeling themselves about playing the next 3 at OKC and then San Antonio, than they're going to be about playing the Pelicans in Orlando and Miami. Although I think there'll be some juice for Miami, but the game in Miami is the second of a back-to-back, and the game in Miami is the 6th game on the 6-game road trip. Like, that is a punisher And we saw what happened to the Warriors when Jimmy Butler went back there in March, and it was all Miami all night long. And the Heat are off to a better start. I mean, they're playing better basketball at the beginning of this year with the team that they have now than they were at the end of last year. Moving forward here, a couple of more this segment. EB here, as long as Moody and Post hit their wide open threes, we will be in every game. Quentin Post is somebody that hadn't been mentioned tonight to this point, and shame on me because I think he should have been. He hit some shots early tonight. Ended up 2 for 7, but I think he was 2 for his first 2 from 3-point range. And he had 8 boards tonight as well. And Steve Kerr started big. I'm not as big of a fan of the big starting lineups. And even without Steph, though, Steve did it. Butler was at the 2, Kuminga the 3, with Draymond and Quentin Post on the front line, freeing up Draymond to kind of roam around defensively and wreak some havoc. Brandon Pajemski, the starting point guard. Quentin Post, I think, deserves a nod because he hit some big shots early in the game. His rebounding presence was there. And yeah, when those guys hit threes, and the Warriors weren't hitting threes tonight, 12 of 44, 27%. They shot worse from 3 tonight. They made one more 3 than Indiana did. They shot a worse percentage than Indiana did. Where the Warriors really did the number tonight in terms of finding some extra scoring. Bench, obviously, 57-30. But you look at the Warriors' free throw line, 26 of 37 at the free throw line. The Warriors were a plus 18 in terms of makes at the free throw line. They were a plus 26 in terms of attempts at the free throw line. So the Warriors really, in a lot of ways, won the game there, and they won the game also with their defense, which is something that we have not seen them do. Opponent be damned here, but the Warriors won the game with their defense tonight against a not the greatest, greatly talented of Indiana teams, but they did force 22 turnovers, and they scored 28 points off those turnovers. So the points off turnovers, the free throws, making up for the fact that they really didn't hit threes tonight. But Moody did, and Quentin Post did early, which I thought was important, especially when you start that big lineup. Pat H., good on Kerr for sitting JK down. Look what happens when they did. Yeah, basically the big run of the game came right when Jonathan Kuminga went to the bench toward the end of that third quarter. And look, Kerr's not going to be afraid to do that. I mean, Kuminga earned the opportunities that he's had here to begin the season, and he's played well, at least the first maybe 6-7 games of the year. He played well. It has been more of a struggle for Kuminga, as we've discussed here over these last 4 games, but we shall see. Kerr's not ever going to be afraid to make a move to sit Kuminga down if it's not working. And tonight was just not his night. And so you get back and you see how things match up against Oklahoma City. And I know Rich Ray and Robert, it does sound like Steph is going to come back and play. Rich Ray, when is Steph coming back? Sounds like it is going to be Tuesday from Steve Kerr in the post-game press conference tonight at Chase Center. Expected to play. I know he was going to get a workout in. I think he got a workout in the practice gym at Chase Center, my understanding, before the game tonight. And he was feeling well enough to where they're going to try to go through another workout. He's going to show up and they're going to go through another workout tomorrow. Steph is, before they get on the plane to go to Oklahoma City. Usually that's around 11 or noon, typically Pacific time. The Warriors will load up and head on out to the airport. In this case, head on out to OKC and then San Antonio before stops against the Pelicans, Orlando, and Miami. So Steph's supposed to get another workout in tomorrow, and if all goes well, he would be penciled in to play in the game on Tuesday night at Oklahoma City. All right, a couple of more here. Douglas Mikes, great to hear from you, Douglas Mikes. Give Will Richard all of GP2's minutes, all of Yield's minutes, and just for the hell of it, all of Jacob Evans' minutes as well. Now, that's a name we haven't heard in a while. Haven't heard the Jacob Evans name in a while. I mean, yeah, GP 4 minutes tonight, but you can. I mean, you look at tonight. I mean, how many will Richard play tonight? He only played 19 tonight. Can you? I think, but it hasn't been 19 every night, and I think they can get to a point where he's playing 19. You could pencil him in for a couple of shifts a half, and basically get him to a point where he's playing, I think 20 minutes almost at a minimum, on a given night. And look, it's going to fluctuate. Young players are going to make mistakes too. I mean, I don't want to act like Will Richard hasn't had his share of mistakes, but Will Richard has, I think shown that Will Richard is the kind of player that even when he makes mistakes, his mistakes really don't completely kill you to a point where it's like, damn, we got to rip this guy right out of the game and right off the floor and on the bench and see you later. So I think that's a good call. Greg Silver chiming in. JD, you should join the midday show tomorrow. Yeah, I am going to join the midday show tomorrow, Greg. I think I will. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. until 2. I'm going to be sitting in for Papa tomorrow with the great Greg Silver here on these Sports Leaders.
Yeah,
so,
why text JD when you could comment in the YouTube chat? I think you get a quicker answer that way.
Why text? Yeah, why text me, Greg? Then why text me? Yeah, but yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. Yeah, we'll do. I think we can work on that tomorrow. So yeah, we'll be talking a lot about the Niner game tomorrow and maybe a little bit about the Dubs, but it's going to be mostly a 49er highlighted show with the Niners taking the L against the Rams at Levi's. But yeah, catch me then, and appreciate Greg for checking in and making sure I'm still awake here after a long day. I think I got to Levi's about this time in the AM. Got to Levi's about 9:30 in the AM. Going to be leaving Levi's at about I got to Levi's about 10 in the morning. I'm going to be leaving Levi's, I think, at about 10 at night. So all good though. And then back with Greg tomorrow at 10 in the morning again. It's just how we roll, man. Just how we roll on these Sports Leader. All right, one more and we'll take a timeout. JC Mack, Will's cutting is supreme. It's what we hope JK would do. One thing at a time for JK. I mean, they're working on rebounding, which he's been significantly improved. And I think because JK is going to be somebody that has the ball in his hands more, they want JK to be able to pass better as opposed. So he isn't often, but yeah, if he could cut and take, get offense off of what others can bring, off of the other actions that the Warriors bring, that's always been an area where Kuminga's been highly impactful. But yeah, Will Richard cuts, man. He is a great cutter. And that is something that I think really allows it really allows him to be a more impactful part of the Steph Curry's still around type of offense with the Warriors. So good stuff there. Our initial Kyle's Clicks. We'll do more Kyle's Clicks coming up in the next segment as well. I do have some text messages to get to. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line as well. But we will get our sounds of Dubs OT coming up here in just a moment. Still time to sneak in some calls as well. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. As we roll on here, Warriors get the win over the Pacers 114-83, and we are talking about it. Best Dubs coverage in the Bay. It's right here on the Sports Leader. All right, welcome back. Dubs OT rolling on here. Final segment, long segment. We'll go to about 9:55 or so here to end the show as the Warriors get the win over the Indiana Pacers, 114-83, the final. Warriors heading out on a 6-game road trip, which is going to begin Tuesday. And of course, we're going to be with you after Tuesday night's game right around 7:30, Wednesday night's game right around 7:30 as well. Warriors taking on the Spurs. And then it's a later start for Friday, 6:30 Pacific time. So we'll be on right around 9 for that one. And we'll be doing that show. Looks like I think I'll be in the desert for that show, heading to Arizona for the Niners and the Arizona Cardinals next weekend. So we'll have that one for you on Friday, and then the Pelicans followed by Orlando and Miami. So a lot of games coming up here with the Warriors heading on the road. And we're going to be all over it, of course, as we always are here on the Sports Leader. All right, let's get to our Sounds of Dubs OT. We'll do more Kyle's clicks here. Also, a couple of text messages that I want to sneak in addition to that. But let's go right back to our Sounds of Dubs OT, and let's start with Steve Kerr addressing a little bit of the bigger picture for the Warriors as they sit here at 6-5 now, with the next 6 away from the Bay Area and away from Chase Center.
We're not playing very well. Clearly, we had a great fourth quarter, end of third, and then fourth quarter, the ball started moving. There was some flow, and but overall, we haven't played real well. But I'm very confident in this team. It's going to be a tough trip, as you mentioned, 2 back-to-backs. We kind of felt like, getting through this early part of the schedule in one piece, and if we're healthy and win our share of games, that it sets up the rest of the season well for us. So obviously we gave a couple games away, but all in all, we're pretty healthy, and we're going to get there. I can picture the team. I can see what what kind of team we're going to be, but we don't really have our identity yet.
All right, so there you go. No identity yet. And they kicked away a couple of games. And I think if they win in Indiana or Milwaukee, really Indiana is the one. And if they could have, between Indiana and Milwaukee and Sacramento, if you could have got 2 of those 3, I think that would have been a reasonable ask. Now, we all know the reasons why they lose the game in Sacramento. I mean, if Steph plays, they win that game. If Draymond plays, hell, maybe if Draymond only plays in that game and Jimmy and Steph wind up sitting, they might have had enough to win that game. But it is gone now. And this team is 6-5, and they're not 7-4 or 8-3. And if they had a couple of those wins, we might look at the whole big picture a little bit differently. But it is interesting to see, and Kerr always typically positive, but to hear the tone there from Steve Kerr, that they kind of know that the beginning of the year had the potential to be a little janky, and that the most important thing was just treading water through it and maybe having an opportunity to have a real strong record. And if you had a strong record, you'd feel great about where you are as things start to settle in. Really, after this stretch, they start to settle in a little bit more. And then, bunch of home games after you get to the calendar year of 2026 and you get into January, a ton of home games then, those first 3 weeks of the new year. But that's still a long ways to go. You still got to get through November. You still got to get through December. And, this team has got to figure out a little bit more of what the identity is going to be here, because you don't want to get too far away from having the belief that you can be a team that can avoid the play-in tournament and get somewhere in that top 4 to 6 seeds. It's not dead yet, but you start getting 4 or 5 games under 500 this early in the season, and it may very well wind up being dead. All right, from one Steve Kerr, let's go to the next. And here is another Steve Kerr clip on the team gelling, and a bigger picture discussion as to what he's seen from Jonathan Kuminga overall after one of the more rough nights that Kuminga's had here to begin the year.
So, yeah, as far as the season, the beginning of the season, we feel like our record should be better. We probably let a couple games slip away. But we're finding out a lot about our team. It's been great to see Will Richard play and, try to incorporate Al Horford, let him get comfortable. And then JK has done a really good job, here in the early season. Tonight wasn't his night, but, I think he's had a good start to the season. We're giving him more responsibility, guarding the ball. And he's showing the growth that we had hoped.
And we'll see if that and how that continues in OKC, because the way the Warriors have done it here to begin the year, you would think, hey, you're playing OKC, you're going up against Shea, that on ball, is that going to be Jonathan Kuminga's assignment right there out of the chute in the starting lineup on Tuesday? But yeah, I think again more just honesty in terms of you wish the record was better. It's not, but you're getting opportunities to see how players can fit down the line. And I think Will Richard's an example, and we've talked a ton about it here in the last hour of the show. Will Richard he's somebody that I think the Warriors already kind of know that they can count on to a much greater degree here moving forward as the season goes on than anyone would have thought imaginable going back to training camp and the offseason when he was drafted, and then training camp, and then leading into the beginning of the season. All right, let's hear from Al Horford. It wasn't Al Horford night. Horford tonight ends up scoring 12 points, 4 of 6 shooting from 3-point range. He's a +9. One of the best Al Horford games, I think, of his Warriors tenure, probably number 2 after the game against Denver that the Warriors won on opening night. So here's Big Al on how things have worked out to this point playing in the Warriors offense.
No question about it. It's, we have to continue to find it. We have to continue to work, but it all starts with, that level that coach wants us to play at. He wants us to play with really high energy and for that to be consistent. And playing off of Jimmy, playing off of Steph, Draymond, they make the game really easy for the rest of us.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. And tonight I thought Jimmy really did, again, set that tone of making the game easier for the others. And ultimately, as the game went on, late third quarter, fourth quarter, the others were able to ride with Jimmy and get on the big run that allowed for the Warriors to take control of the game and win it in blowout fashion. All right, from Al Horford, let's continue to Will Richard, the Warriors rookie, who had a big part in this game tonight. Will Richard winds up playing 19 minutes. He's a +19. 15 points. He got to the free throw line 8 times and knocked down 7 of them. And he's doing a little bit of everything with the 3 boards, and he's always seemingly got a steal, and he moves the basketball. Let's hear from the rook, Will Richard.
Yeah, just making impact, whether that's on the offensive, defensive end, and sprinting the floor and doing stuff like that. Like I said, I grew up watching the Warriors, so for me, Steph and Dre and all them, they made my childhood. So I feel like every time I'm on the court, I need to pay that back by going out there and playing as hard as I can.
There you go. That's part of when you got the OGs, man. You start getting the guys come into the league that watched you play, and it's like a dream come true to be on the same floor with them. And so again, a little bit of that raw, brutal honesty in a positive light from the youngster Will Richard. And look, his game translates. His game definitely translates with what the Warriors have done here for the better part of a decade now in the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond Green era, as those 3 still reside in the Bay, and this team still attempts to continue to be looking to try to win championships. So far so good as it relates to Will Richard. And again, I'm telling you, I think he's going to get an enhanced role here moving forward. But I'm not saying it's 25, 30 minutes a night, but I do think the 15 to 20 minutes every night for Will Richard, especially when it becomes go time in terms of the winning rotation. I do think Kerr's going to have to carve out those minutes, and I do think Steve Kerr is going to be able to carve out those minutes for Will Richard. All right, let's hear from Jimmy Butler to close up our Sounds of Dubs OT here tonight on The Sports Leader. Jimmy talking here about something that was going all the way back to our first segment tonight, at the end of that segment, talking about his need to be more aggressive when Curry is out. Sometimes it's been there, sometimes it hasn't. Jimmy got asked about it post game. Here's what he had to say.
I think it's a balance of being aggressive and making sure that everybody gets their shots. I love making sure that guys are getting their open shots, make sure that their confidence is going early. And then when it's time to score, I think I can do that with the best of them, honestly. But before any and all that stuff, I just think, our pace was great. We were spaced incredibly well tonight on offense. So it looked a lot better.
Yeah, the spacing, I think, can make all the difference in the world. But again, that balance, I mean, Jimmy really is such an unselfish player. That's such an important part of all of it is, I mean, he is unselfish. And I think at times he's unselfish to a fault. I think in reality, I mean, he at times tries a little too hard, I think, to get the others involved, maybe a little too trusting in the others up and down this roster, and I think almost has to look within the framework of making sure others are getting their opportunities to make sure he's getting his own, because I think the pressure that he puts on a defense when he's truly looking to get his own, I think that ultimately is as beneficial or more beneficial than the unselfishness as it relates to getting the players those looks. And so I think that's the part that really truly stands out to me. Like, you can be unselfish, and that's a tremendous trait. And when you have a loaded team, that's awesome. But there is a balance, to use his words, that I do think has to be there, as far as, hey, you were also brought in to be the second star. And when you're the second star and the primary star is not there, that means you're the first star. And so you can be unselfish and you can get everybody involved. You could do all of those things, but I think we all at times have looked at Jimmy here and said, go get it, man. Like, this is your world. You're the dude, and this team needs that because it lacks that. And I think there's a confidence that comes with having a lead dog be that aggressive that allows the other younger players and the role players to relax and play their game. So I think that's a big part of it. And I agree. JC Mack in the chat here, Jimmy should break the defense down first, get his, and then pass when everyone is free. I that's not necessarily every night, but I think that is most nights, JC. That is most nights, especially the nights where Steph isn't around. That to me is what it's got to be. He is the threat above everybody else, and so you got to get to that point where you can do that and then move on from there. All right, good installment here of Sounds of Dubs OT. Appreciate Kyle Haar and Anthony Garcia and everybody back in our Daly City studios that are getting the job done there for us tonight. Big thanks and a real good segment here. All right, let's do about another 8 to 10 minutes of Kyle's clicks here, going back through. And while we get set up for that, Kyle, I also want to do a couple of notes from the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. 408, JD, do you think it's realistic that the Warriors could go 1-5 or 0-6 in this trip? After this Indy game, I'm highly leaning that way. I don't take that much away from the Indy game tonight because Steph didn't play. I mean, there were big time chunks of it that were ugly, and I never really thought they were going to lose, but man, it was on the table. I think it was on the table. It just felt like it was a step away from being on the table tonight, unfortunately. But yeah, I think as you look at, I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win 2 or 3. I think they're going to go 2-4, 3-3. If you say how many wins in this trip, let's throw in the chat. How many wins in this trip? for the Dubs. 6-game trip at OKC, at San Antonio times 2, Pelicans, Orlando, Miami. I think they're going to go 3-3. I think they're going to go 3-3. I think they're going to 2-4, 3-3 is probably the most likely outcome. Steph's coming back. Again, we'll see. Do they? I think this team tends to play better against better teams, especially when they're whole. So I think that gives them a shot. But I think they will win 2 games minimum on the trip. So yeah, I mean, is there a shot they go 1-5? Sure. But I think they're going to win at least 2 games, two or 3 games. I'm not going to say I'm as optimistic to think they're going to win 4, but I could see them splitting with San Antonio, beating the Pelicans, and splitting with Orlando and Miami. Like I could see that. And then you lose to OKC. I could see them beating OKC. Hell, I could see them beating OKC, splitting with San Antonio, beating the Pelicans, and then losing to Orlando and Miami at the end. Like I could see all of those. I could see all of those scenarios. I could see them winning 2 of the first 3 and then losing to the Pelicans, and then beating Orlando and losing to Miami, or beating Miami and losing to Orlando. Like I could. You got to tell me how many games some of these guys are going to be taken off as well. 907 on the Golden State Lumber Short text line. Today's game was a scrimmage. 414 Will Richard is the next Warriors breakout star. Continue to produce at a high level. I don't know about star, but I think he is somebody that can play on any team. And then the 224 Dub Nation expects a winning trip, playing at a high level, led by Curry, playing at an MVP level. So I don't know, Kyle. Let me ask you, what's a good trip? What's a realistic trip?
A realistic trip is 3-3.
Okay.
A good trip is 4-2. I mean, the back half of that road trip are all like winnable games, and I think, and I would like to think that you split with the Spurs, and then the one like you could pencil in for a loss would be the Thunder.
Yeah, and then again, I'm a little leery of Miami at the end. I'm a little leery of Miami at the end of that trip. Like that game being the 6th game, I think makes it more likely to be an L, especially with the back-to-back on top of the fact that it's the six game. But yeah, tell me how many of these games that the Warriors vets are going to play. Are they going to give everybody the night off in San Antonio, or are they not going to give everybody the night off in San Antonio because they've got some guys that have just had some time off? So are they going to go through another one of these stretches where, maybe they try to play it out until the Orlando or Miami game before they give everybody, because you don't want to be given, to me, if you've got 2 sets of back-to-backs, in a 6-game trip, then you're not giving everybody 2 nights off. Like you might give everybody 1 night off. So you're giving everybody the San Antonio game off, or you're giving everybody the Miami game off at the end, or the Orlando game off in front of the Miami game at the end. Like that's the question. You're not giving everybody. And I think, Steve has mentioned at different points in press conferences that the plan has been to not have as many nights where everybody gets the night. I think that they're going to want to try to mix it up a little bit more, where maybe Jimmy gets a night, or maybe Dre gets a night, maybe Steph and Dre get a night, but Jimmy plays, maybe Jimmy and Dre play, but Steph gets a night, maybe trying to mix it up a little bit. So we'll see. Put that back up from Digum 117. The problem is this team won't take the Pelicans seriously and lose that one. Yeah. Also on the table. That's also very much on the table. All right, let's run through here for the next 5 minutes. Fitz kept saying Warriors held the Pacers too. Nah, Indy's the worst shooting team in the league. They were simply missing shots. You do get credit for it, but yes, here I'm with you. I don't think there was anything special going on as it relates to the Warriors defense. Pods, 14 points, 6 rebounds, plus 22. What do you want him to paint your house? Okay. Pods played well tonight. He played really well tonight. Again, Pods doesn't, I think, get the praise when he plays at the level that he played at. Good one there from EB here. Pete Tollner, Dub Nation wants to see the same swag they have at Chase on the road. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. JD, Niners or Dubs more disappointing at this point in time? Warriors right now are more disappointing. I mean, the fact that the Niners are 6-4 with all the injuries, I think that's still a big time positive. The Niners at 6-5 right now, kicking a couple of games away and having it already feel like it's the middle of January when it's barely the beginning of November. That's more disappointing, I think, at this point. Although I have ruled out the 49ers as legitimate contenders, LM. For this season, they can make the playoffs. They could maybe even win a game, but Super Bowl contenders don't see it. Warriors, we still, the jury's still out on whether or not the Warriors can get to that point where they can contend for a championship. San Jose Jazz fan 8, game tonight was not good enough to love it and not bad enough to hate it. Just meh. Yeah, it was a lot of meh tonight. But again, I hate to always go to the better than the alternative, but it's better than the alternative. I mean, could you imagine if as ugly as it was, you imagine what that game looks like if the Warriors are tied with 2 minutes left and have to win by 4? I mean, then we really would be talking about, I mean, at least they found a way to put the game away, even if Indiana didn't have any of their top 8 players playing. It just, yeah, Robert, I'm with you, man. I was starting to imagine it too. I really was. Only it was that Indiana never losing at Chase Center thing was getting stuck in my head. All right, let's move forward here. We'll do a few more. Who knew Horford would score more than Aaron Rodgers today? Too soon? Never too soon. Yeah, the Steelers are reeling. Wow. All of a sudden, the Chargers are back on track. Next up, Bennett Roth. Hopefully Curry finally kicked the illness and he's out there against the Thunder. He sat on the bench tonight, if that means anything. Yeah, it sounds like Curry's going to play, and you're right. I think if Curry was contagious with anything that he had been dealing with, then I don't think they would have let him sit close to the other players. So I think he's out of his quarantine. I kid when I say that. Ian J, I'll laugh if Dre ends up with the better 3-point shooting percentage than Clay. Man, Clay is struggling. But we wish Clay the best. We talked about that a lot last year. Right decision. Clay wanted to go. Right decision for the Warriors to move on. It's maybe it hasn't worked out best for Clay, but it's worked out, I think, pretty well for the Warriors. And I do not think that's something that they should look to dabble in, any kind of a return at this point, for this season. Next year we'll see how things ultimately shake out. But yeah, Clay made his choice. And I mean, imagine, and I think somebody alluded to this in the chat earlier, Kyle, but imagine if Clay was shooting it as poorly as he's shooting it, and still there's this undertone of he has to start every game. Like, freeing yourself of that, it had a benefit. And again, that's no shade on Clay. He's a great future Hall of Fame player. He's an all-time great Warrior. He's a champion. And he's a guy that, Dub Nation's always going to love. But it reached the end of its rope, I think. For the time being, between Clay and the organization. Zerkerex, with the 49ers losing today, I needed the Warriors to win to even it out. Yeah, they did. They handled business for you. All right, let's get to our comment of the night. Joke's on you. Will Richard is drinking Kuminga's milk. Drinking it all up. Yeah. There's no question. It's a good one. Joke's on you. There is no doubt about it. Good stuff there. Appreciate everybody in the YouTube chat tonight and those of you texting in on the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. All right, let's get to our fun with numbers.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, Warriors' fifth straight home win. So they're 5-0 at home, 6-5 overall. Last time the Warriors had 5 straight wins at home begin the year, it was that 2018-19 season. It's never happened at Chase. We talked about this a week ago after the last home game, but the Warriors won their first 6 in the final year at Roracle in 2018 in that 18-19 season. So this is the best home start that the Warriors have had in the history of Chase Center as they improved to 5-0. How about this note? The 31-point win, Kyle Haar, against the Pacers is the largest victory in terms of margin without Steph Curry for the Warriors since Steph Curry entered the league. This is the most the Warriors have ever won a game by without Steph since Steph has been a member of the Golden State Warriors. 114-83, 31-point victory for the Dubs. Their best win without Steph in terms of margin since they drafted Steph back in the summer of 2009. The Warriors ended an overall 4-game losing streak to Indiana and 6-game losing streak to the Pacers at Chase Center. I can't stop laughing. Pacers had never lost at Chase Center. They had won each of the first 6 seasons that the building has been open. 2 teams split this year's season series, 1-1. And the Warriors wrapping up a season series between any opponent as quickly as they have against any other opponent in the last 20 years. You got to go back to 2005, 2006 against the Knicks, the last time the Warriors had ended a season series already against any opponent so quickly. 83 points for the Pacers, second fewest they've allowed to any opponent. It was the 79 against the Clippers, the 83 tied for the fewest scored by Indiana against the Warriors in a long time, all the way back to 1999, and some other player notables on this one. Actually, one more team note. Second time this season, the Warriors had 6 players score in double figures. Sixth time this season, the Warriors had at least 10 steals. And Jimmy Butler, game high 21, 9 boards, 7 assists for Jimmy Butler in this one. Will Richard, 15 off the bench. Third straight game scoring in double figures. He's averaging 19 points over the last 3 games without Steph Curry. Will Richard, 19 points. Go figure. Al Horford with one of his best games since joining the Warriors, as he ended up knocking down 4 3-pointers to finish with 12 points overall. Also had 4 boards and moved into a tie with Larry Bird for the 58th most rebounds in NBA history. Steph Curry, 3rd straight game missed, but Steph is expected to be back on Tuesday in Oklahoma City. All right, that is going to do it. Kyle Haar, appreciate you, my man. Long day for Kyle Haar. Kyle Haar was running the Niner game and running Niner post game and hanging out for Dubs OT. Big round of applause for the great Kyle Haar in our Daly City studios here. Kyle, appreciate you. We have Anthony Garcia to thank as well. And Overnight Dave, I saw popping in. Anybody we're leaving out tonight here, Kyle?
No, but yeah, thanks to everyone at the studio who was here throughout the days. Ryan McCarthy, he was here cutting Niners. Dan Dunn ran the first part of Niners so that I could, do this shift and this show.
Exactly.
He did the pregame in the first quarter. So no, shout out to them as well.
Yeah, Danny Dunn, and Danny was part of our Just Dubs inaugural show for our debut show of 2025-26. So stay tuned for that. We're back on this show right around 7:30 on Tuesday night after the Warriors take on the Thunder. And I am back tomorrow with Greg Silver from 10 a.m. until 2. So stay tuned for that here on the Sports Leader. Sitting in for Greg Papa. We'll be talking a lot of Niners, a little bit of Dubs, but a lot of Niners as well here. Tough one for the 49ers at Levi's against the Rams. So we'll talk to you tomorrow and on Tuesday. Warriors get the win over the Pacers. They get the job done 114-83. Dubs OT with JD. We'll talk to you Tuesday on the Sports Leader.
Emirates Cup or bust?
Oh, hell yeah.
First of all, you got to start off liking each other.
I'm super cereal.
Big